Yes, it can. There's a business problem with that as well, because I think what also happened in the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, if you look back into the 90s, for instance, it's interesting because I was just on that 20 years FMX track, and I needed to condense my life story because I started here at the Film Academy, obviously, which was kind of the starting ground for FMX. I condensed my life story into 5 minutes. Then it was interesting. So I looked back and I really thought back a lot. So how did I start? How did we do these things in the 90s? You know, it was still the wild west of digital technology. Kind of everything switched from Silicon Graphics over to Windows NT machines because they just adopted OpenGL, and we built our own computers and servers, and you know, everything was just kind of, you know, just wild west basically. But it was fun. And one of the main things that I noticed have happened in the last 10, 15 years is there has been in my opinion, over-specialization of artists. So you would always have, in the 90s you mainly had generalists. And then after a while you would have generalists with a specialty, which is a very good thing. But that evolved slowly into specialists that are only specialists. So today, you can actually find people who are modelers, for instance, and have no clue about texturing. Or you can find a rigger who doesn't know anything about modeling. You can have a compositor who's never done tracking in his life. That was unthinkable 10, 15 years ago. And that compartmentalization, that specialization, I believe, is a byproduct of those newer tools that are coming out, because people are now trying to hone in on that and say, okay, well, I'll focus on this. And it's so difficult to just learn this that I have to focus all my energy on just this. And they end up being these specialists, which is a very, very difficult thing to manage now, because as I mentioned earlier, so, you know, I do one project that needs these effects artist specialists, and then the next project is a talking cat. So, well, if I had, not that that's really possible, so it's not a great example, but you know where I'm going. If I had people who could do, you know, mouth lip sync animation and effects, well, that would solve all my problems, because now I can take that team that just did, you know, Crumbling of Los Angeles and move them over and have them work on the talking cat. That doesn't work that way, but at least if, you know, in a smaller scale or so with compositors who could work that way, would be great. So with that example, to answer your question, I think it actually is kind of detrimental to the business and sometimes even to the development of the artists themselves, because they become, well, I don't know how to put it. There's a German word, actually. It's called Fachidioten, which means kind of compartmentalized idiots. So you only know, you're an idiot about everything else except for this one little thing, right? You know this. And that, I think, is a little bit dangerous, because one of the things that I made a lifetime of a business out of this by being the person that kind of knows a little bit about everything. I mean, I understand how it works. I'm not an artist. I could not animate this beautiful talking cat, but I know exactly how it works, and I know what you need to do. You know, I could do it probably badly, but I could do it, and that's so important that I kind of really understand the workflow process. So I am in essence a major generalist, and I think it is very, very important, because it also gives me certain ideas about, why are you doing this? Sometimes people are doing a certain thing, and it's only because they don't know anything about the other steps of the pipeline. They don't know where whatever they're doing came from or where this is going. If they knew that, at least rudimentarily, they could think in a different way. They could think outside the box and say, hey, does it really make sense that I'm doing this? Wouldn't it be so much better that the compositor does this? Because he can do this in 5 minutes. I'm going to take 5 days for this. And a lot of that is lost. And that, I think, is a byproduct of this specialization and specialized new tools that take all your attention, which is not always a positive thing. I think the problem is that every film is so unique in so many different ways. Every screenplay is different. You might have a historical drama, you might have a science fiction movie, you might have a thriller, whatever that is contemporary. And then on top of that, every team making that movie is different. So now you have this mathematical equation with two different unknowns in there, basically, right? So you mix that together, and it can fail in a lot of different places. I mean, I have to say, I think it's sometimes mind-boggling to myself too, where I thought, really, you did not notice that when you read the script that this is going to be such a turd? But then, I have to say for myself too, one of the very first movies that we produced and also co-wrote, Coronado. It's a small little adventure movie that we did 15 years ago and kind of financed all with private investors. It's easy to fall into the trap, because when you sit together and you do this and the ideas are flowing and you come together, you write a screenplay, suddenly you're thinking you're making the best things in sliced bread. Because these ideas are just fantastic and whatever. And it'll take you a while to get the distance and look from the outside and say, hey, maybe actually it wasn't as great as I thought it would be, unfortunately. So that happened to me personally, of course, in the past. Never, at least I believe, that it's such a turd that I'd really have to be embarrassed about it. At least I don't think so. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't know where it happens. I mean, I'm a big fan of preparation, of course, and I think this is a longer story, obviously, but I still believe that the way that animated movies are being done is the way we should do feature films as well, live-action feature films. So what I mean is that you lay out your entire movie. You do your storyboards, you do your animatic, you time it, you put music and sound and everything underneath, and then you bring people in and you test it, in essence. You bring your friends in and you find out, timing doesn't really work well, that scene doesn't work well, and then you rewrite it. You do all that, but you do all that on paper, with drawing. I would suggest you should do that with pre-visualization, for instance, because we have the tools. There's no reason not to right now. And make your movie there, and make it a couple times until you know, okay, this is great. Because if it works in pre-visualization, you notice that movie is great. Well, just imagine how well this will work when Al Pacino actually plays that role, and you don't have your little pre-visualization figure there that can hardly move any facial muscles and so on. So, and I noticed you do know from a previs whether something works or whether it doesn't work. You might have a chance that if previs doesn't work, an actor might still elevate it to a level where it works, but that's a 50-50 chance. What you know for sure is if your previs already works, and if you get emotionally attached to it, which you do, it actually works with music and everything. You could start crying about a stupid previs. If that works, you know it's going to be a slam dunk when a good actor actually acts this. So, again, long story short, total different story, but it kind of answers this a little bit. I believe that's the way we should plan the movies. We're still, the way the studios are producing the movies is still the old concept of you have 4 months of pre-production. It's been done since like 1938 probably. Then you have you're about 5 months on a big movie, 5 months of shoot, and then, depending on what it is, probably another 9 months of post-production. It's always still the same schema. I think it should be the other way around. I think you should have very, very long pre-production. That's your cheapest period. Just use that, do it, and really find your movie and then start shooting it. I know there's a lot of issues with actors' availabilities and so on, but well, deal with it. I mean, you're not helped having a great actor in a shitty movie. I mean, it doesn't help the actor and it doesn't help the studio either, or the independent producer for that sake. So I believe if we could learn a little bit there from the animated world and kind of transport that over and change the timing of how we work, do a little bit less post-production, because post-production now starts in pre-production already anyway, so there is no post-production period per se anymore. Even editing starts pretty much the first week of shooting, so there is no post anymore. It's stupid to actually still think in those sections, but it's still even in the budgets and so on, it's still laid out like this. So 12 weeks prep and then so many weeks post. So just as by way of answering that, maybe that could help actually, get to a point where you recognize very early on if you have a turret or not. So that's what I would do. If I was the head of a studio, that's where I would put my money. I would say, let's build up a studio in-house previous unit or team up with, I don't know, the third floor or whatever. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but just build a unit that give them the tools, develop the tools better with game engines and so on. I mean, we have great tools. We're not really quite there yet, but are on the verge of being there. And make all your movies like that first, and then move on to actually make them. For me, FMX is a place of learning. Because I want to go now, actually, in this afternoon, I'm going to a seminar about augmented reality and virtual reality. So it's fantastic for me to go to a place where there are peers that do a different thing than I do that I can learn from, and they can show what they're doing, or whether it's, Joe Letteri from Weta showing what they did on the latest Hobbit or something like that. I mean, that's for me the most exciting thing about this, and also that it is a community. I mean, all the speakers go out to the speakers' dinner at first, and you get to know people that probably live kind of three streets away from me in Los Angeles, and I've never met them. Here I actually meet them. And you actually talk about things about the state of the industry. We have the CEO Summit here, both for commercials and for feature films, where you kind of talk behind closed doors and can just talk about a little bit about what are your problems, what's the state of the industry. I mean, just kind of on a almost more of a friendship basis, because we're on the same boat. It's like and that's, I think it's wonderful.